We are going live. I mean, for all intents and purposes, we must be live already. So I'm going to say hello. Hello to Rachel Michelle Wilson. And welcome to the New Books Network. I'm Mel Rosenberg. I always forget who I am. What am I? You see, I've just forgot. Um, Hold on a second. This is so embarrassing. Yes, I am the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. And I'm here with the wonderful debut author. Can I call you a debut author?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm going to call you anyway, debut author. Rachel Michelle Wilson with a wonderful, magnificent book, which caused me to pee in my pants without a diaper. Um, a, a few words about this book, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, by the way. I feel honored. And about this book, How to Pee Your Pants the Right Way, um, it is about a little owl character who pees his pants, and it's an absurd comedy. And so he's trying to figure out what to do. It goes all sorts of crazy directions, but ultimately, um, talks about connection with others, and how these experiences can connect us across different lives.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we'll just say that it's published by Feiwel and Friends,
Hmm.
which is part of Macmillan, right?
Yes.
And it just came out a few months ago, in the middle of October.
Hmm.
And you're also the illustrator?
Yes, I did both the writing and illustrating. Surprise.
Wow. And we won't talk about your age, but you're very, very young. And you're breaking into this industry, like going to sweep up awards. You have another book coming out in the summer, and many of it you don't want to talk about. You have an agent. Um, well, start at the beginning. You know what? Before we start at the beginning, I just changed my mind.
Okay.
Show us some of the spreads. The spreads. That's a good one for a PP book. Of your beautiful of your gorgeous book.
Thank you. I love the pea puns. There are some in the book. So this is the front cover. The funny thing about this cover is I designed it. The character came to me very uh just already complete. And later on, I saw a picture of myself as a first grader, and I was wearing a shirt that looks exactly like this, and I had giant glasses. So I had no idea, but my little kid self was directing this whole thing. So that was kind of a fun reveal. But the end papers of him potty dancing, that was really fun to draw. Let's see. My favorite spread is actually the one where he pees his pants and then he's like, "What should I wear? How can I find clean clothes?" And I had so much fun with this spread of drawing ridiculous things that he tries on as his clothing. So that's one of my
So,
favorite spreads.
Rachel, a lot of people are going to be just listening to this on the podcast.
Oh
So
yeah.
read us a bit of the book.
Oh yeah, I'd be honored. Okay. How to pee your pants the
Stop
right
being
way.
honored. We're honored to have you on the show. What's with this honor business? We're
I
both
really
honored, okay? We're
I
both honored.
we're both honored. Okay. Okay. It can happen when you are sleeping. It can happen in class. It can even happen when you are sleeping in class. Maybe you didn't want to interrupt the lesson. Maybe you didn't want to miss out on something spectacular. Or maybe you drank too much lemonade, the lunch lady offered refills, and your friends made you laugh so hard that things got serious. You probably tried to prevent it using a number of scientifically tested methods. Sitting very still, holding your breath, crossing your legs, even the grab and hold. Obvious, but effective. Yet despite all your efforts, it still happened. You peed your pants.
Incredible. Um, take us back to the very early childhood of uh, of Rachel Michelle Wilson.
Yeah. Oh, so I've always loved reading and writing, and it was a big part of my house. Trips to the library, those were our favorite days, and we'd come home with stacks and stacks. We'd fill our car and it would spill over.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Utah. I was in well, I first grew up in Provo, Utah. And then we moved to a place called Highland, and they're pretty nearby. And but we would take long trips to go to the Draper Library because it was the best library and had the best access to all the books. So we would take this lovely drive into the mountains and get to the library and come back. And it was this trek that we loved.
And you mentioned, like, I have this theory that we write to our young selves. People who write picture books write to their 5-year-old. And you actually alluded to that a few minutes ago. Is this book written with or to the 5-year-old Rachel? Did you have a P incident? What happened here?
Yes. Okay. So this what inspired the book was actually in first grade. I was at school and I would get really nervous because our playground was so big that I would lose my friends if I went to the bathroom and I wouldn't be able to find them, and that caused so much anxiety for me for some reason. So I would hold it and hold it. And then there was one recess where I was standing in a circle of girls and I peed my pants like everyone could see. And then I had to sneak my way. I was trying to make sure no one saw. I snuck my way into the office. And then I called my mom, but she was at work. And so before I sat down to wait for her to bring me a new pair of pants, I heard behind me, "Stop!" And I froze and I didn't know what was happening. And the office lady went into the back room, came back with a giant roll of bubble wrap, wrapped it around the chair, and then told me, "Now you can sit." And it was this source of embarrassment for so many years. But yeah, I wanted to transform that story into something more connecting. And later on, when I was in middle school, actually, I was at a sleepover and another girl peed her pants laughing. And all of a sudden, we all started laughing. And for the first time, I shared my pee pants story with peers. And the shame just
What was
melted
that? Was it
away.
you shared your story with peers or with
Yes.
peers?
Ah, I didn't
Sorry.
even realize that. No,
Oh,
that's
I'm sorry. I
that's
apologize.
really good. That's really
Nah.
good.
Okay. So you shared
Exactly.
your story
Shared my
with
story and
with colleagues.
yes, with colleagues. And the shame melted away for all of us. And so I kind of wanted to take both that shameful moment from the past and then also the laugh with ourselves moment and put them together in a book so that when I was reading it, I like the book I wish I had when I peed my pants as a kid, basically, is what I wanted to make. And so that's what I hope it is.
Okay, and so you grew up in Utah,
hmm
and you were part of the Church of the Latter-day Saints.
hmm
And I've interviewed a lot of authors of that religion,
Yeah.
and they all, or most of them, talk about their love of picture books, their love of children's books, their great humanity. Was this something that was like is like in your bones? It's run me through this. I'm Jewish.
Oh yeah. I think storytelling and speaking is a really big part of the culture. And though I'm not a part of the religion anymore, I really there were some really wonderful things that I feel like it taught me and helped me with. And so yeah, I feel like storytelling was a big part of it, and stories in general, and how we can integrate those in our lives. And so I think that was a big part of it.
And also the importance, like in Judaism, of being a good human being and kind and generous and giving.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And
So,
sometimes I feel like in my childhood, I don't know how to explain it. It was sometimes I felt like I was in a small box for many reasons, a small box, and storytelling and reading picture books, like Where the Wild Things Are, for example, gave me the space to explore all sides of myself and be a little wild, because I was a rule follower, right? And be a little wild and explore all those things.
wow. So, at some stage, did you stop being a rule follower?
I think so. No, I'm still very much a rule follower, but I think I realized I never saw myself as bold. I never saw myself as a risk taker. But I've recently realized over the last few years that there are lots of ways to take risks, and there's lots of types of mischief, and there's lots, and I think storytelling is my place where I can take a little risk. I can explore sides of myself and of the world that I haven't explored before. And it gives me permission to, I feel like a more complete person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it gives you permission to pee your pants.
Exactly. And
So
be loved still, right? And
you'd
be
still be
loved.
loved and
Yes.
appreciated.
Yes.
You went to high school. Anything special about high school, university?
Oh, in high school, okay, so no, nothing super special, but I love taking extra art classes. And then when I went to college, though, I never saw myself as an artist. So I got a degree in English and I knew I wanted to write. That's all I knew. And I didn't know what. And so I thought I was going to become a professor or a psychologist or a teacher. I was going to be a math teacher and English teacher because I also love math and science. I love everything. I love learning. And so it was really hard to decide what to do. And I graduated and was like, what do I do now? And then I worked in the tech industry. And while I was there, I started exploring, doing a poem a day. And that helped me find my voice. And then I rediscovered picture books. And so anyway, and after I rediscovered picture books, I realized, oh, I think I want to draw them as well. So that's why I say that is I can look back and see I was taking extra art classes, but I didn't know for a very long time that I wanted to do the art side of books. So I actually weirdly started out as a writer only when I started the picture book path.
You told me that you had a job in UX, user experience, in the tech world.
Yes.
And did that enable you to express yourself? Were you doing art, content? You know,
Yeah. Yeah, great question. The okay, so for those who don't know, UX writing is if you open up an app and you see the text on a button and the text that guides you through the whole experience. That was my job. And I worked for a life insurance company. I worked for all sorts of different companies. And I loved aspects of it. I really do feel like some of the skills that I loved doing there also translate to picture books, which one big one is taking very complex subjects and writing them in a way that anyone can understand. Super duper clear. And so,
storifying them.
yes, yeah, that too. And a lot of times I didn't have the freedom to write in a fun voice. I had to write in a very straightforward voice. But I think that taught me to pare down my words, pare down my language in a way that every word matters. And so that's what I explored during that time. But a lot of times, to be honest with you, I was very bored. And after work, I would come home and I just felt like I needed something creative. And so that's when I started writing a poem every day because I felt like I had left that side of myself, the creative side of myself behind. And so that's what helped me was on the side. I would be so drained from doing that type of work, just kind of a little bit monotonous sometimes. And then I just needed a creative outlet. And that's what got me started.
And then what happened?
And then, so, okay, so,
You know, Rachel, you don't need me. You'll talk for 2 minutes and I'll say, and then what happened?
okay, sounds good. Then, let's see. Okay, so while I was working there, I visited my mom who was clearing out her garage, and there was this box of picture books. And anyway, she was like, "Grab your stuff, Rachel. It's been too long in here." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'll grab it." Open up and this box, and it's full of picture books that I had collected from when I was a kid to when I left for high school because I had always been obsessed with them. I asked for them for
And
birthdays.
nobody in your family threw them out. That's brilliant.
I know, thank goodness. Well, we're book people, you know. We hold books as like sacred objects.
Or gave them away.
Oh yeah, that too. No, we have we hold on to books. I mean, look at behind me. I have a whole
Yeah.
and more upstairs.
Well,
Yeah,
we're stingy with the books.
yes. And so I opened it up and I read through some of the books that I had, including Where the Wild Things Are. And I actually started crying because it was such an intense experience to reconnect with some of those things. And suddenly, for the first time in my life, this was in my mid 20s, I realized someone made these. Someone wrote and illustrated these, and that's what
Wow.
I want to do. And that gave me this focus, this intense focus that has gotten me to the point where I'm at where I feel like I focused on it. So I did it after work,
So
hours a day.
your book of Revelation
Uh,
was where the wild things are.
for real.
Yeah.
No, that is so true. That is so
Uh,
true.
okay. And then what?
And then, so I'm getting back into, I joined SEBWI. There's also an organization called Storyteller Academy. I'm not sure if they're still teaching classes because I think they were
Hmm.
going to close, but they might still be open. I'm not sure. Anyway, and I started taking classes from other writers and illustrators in the industry and learning so much I just absorbed for years. And then I started writing books because I thought when I had that epiphany, I only thought I'm a writer. And so as I was making these books, I couldn't help but illustrate them. And I kept being like, Rachel, no, you're not an illustrator. But I couldn't help myself. And so then I just kind of went with it and started doing art every single day, practicing it. And
Wow.
I started taking some online classes through those organizations that I mentioned. And yeah, and then put together a portfolio of stories and art to query an agent.
Okay. And then what happened?
And then, so I queried agents, and for those listening, that's when you submit your stories to try to get representation from someone who will help you in your career to get your books in front of editors. And so, yeah, so that's what I was
Was it,
preparing
hold
to
on.
do. Oh,
Editors
yes.
in the publishing houses
Yes.
who are the first gatekeepers to decide whether manuscripts are worthy of trying to publish.
Yes. I'm so glad you
I'm going to have to depart from my regular banter here. So no critique groups on the
Oh,
way, no SCBWI meetings.
all of those.
Mm.
I think I overdid it a little bit. At one point, I was a part of 6 critique groups, 7 critique groups. I was taking feedback all the time. I was so immersed. That's what I mean when I had that epiphany. The focus was just intense, and I put everything into it, very intensely. And so, yeah, and probably a little too much, but that's kind of how I do things. And yeah, so I was learning from critique partners as well, and that was part of the preparation to query agents. Got lots of rejections. But I also studied tons of picture books. I still study, I call them my learn from the great studies. And so I'll choose a creator and study them and all of their work and their life. And it inspires me a lot. So that's what I started doing those. And so then, when I queried, I had a list of agents that when I read picture books, I would write down the person's agent if I really connected with the person. And all of them pointed me to Steve Malk, who is an incredible agent at Writer's House, and also Lindsay Auld, who is my agent now, who was mentored by him. And I had seen like one interview I think with her, and I felt really connected with her. But it's hard to do your research and you only know so much about agents, right? So I could only go by what they represented and some of the things they had said, and I was like, I feel really connected with them. And also Andrea Brown Literary Agency. So I made this list and I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to query them because they're my top agents and agencies until hopefully they say yes. So I made a bunch of stories. I got some rejections along the way. I followed all the rules. You're not supposed to query one story after another, so I followed all those rules as well, because again, rule follower. And then eventually, I submitted a story to Steve Malk. It's actually To Catch a Ghost, which is the one coming out in July 1st. And he said, I'm currently closed to new clients, but I think my colleague Lindsay Auld would really love this story, which
So
happened to be the person I was going to query next.
hold on for a second, Rachel. You
Yeah,
were about to query her, and he said, "Why don't you?" Okay, but before we get there,
yeah,
this was like just straight slush pile query.
yes.
It wasn't like, "Hey, I met you at a conference. Hey, you have regards from Uncle Murray." It was straightforward query.
Yep. Just so I was my book, I got my agent from the slush pile. So I always say can give people hope, you know?
And I will say, because I'm an ex-scientist, that the chances of that happening are minute. Um, you know, I keep saying this because these are the data that out of 3,000 manuscripts, one ends up turning into a traditionally published book. So the odds are against you. But if you know what you're doing and you have extraordinary work, and if you're a writer illustrator, that helps a lot. because lots
Yeah.
of agents are restricting themselves to writer illustrators, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Um, so he said, speak to Lindsay Auld. You say, oh my goodness, she's
Yeah.
next on my list. And then what
Yeah.
happened?
So and then so when you get a referral from an agent to someone else at their agency, they'll just submit their at least this is how they did it. He submitted my story to her and she reached out and then we had the call. And I had also because you can do simultaneous submissions to other agencies. So then I had phone calls with two agents, Lindsay and another agent. And then through those phone calls, I mean, it would have been hard to convince me not to go with Lindsay. Honestly, Lindsay is incredible, and
So
the
you
phone call,
you had another agent interested in you,
yeah, yeah. And so that was
and
exciting.
with the ghost manuscript,
Yes, with the ghost
and
manuscript.
and you ended up ghosting her. Sorry, that's terrible. Okay, so you went with Lindsay, and how long did it take to sell this book?
Okay, so that was exciting. So I'm horrible with dates and times, so forgive me if I.
Approximately.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
I'm trying. I think we came together and we like signed the contract of you're my agent, yay. In March 20. I don't know what year was that? Oh my goodness. I
few,
seriously am the worst. But
a few
anyway,
years ago. Well, I mean, you're so old, you know.
a
How
few
can you remember
I'm
things that
just too
happened so
old. I'm
long
too
ago?
old.
Yeah, yeah. An old spirit. Okay,
Yes,
so
no, really.
and
Um, it was a few months.
it's incredible. And but okay, so now I'm going to tell you. You know, I said this in the pre-warm up before we went on the air that
Yeah.
I read a lot of picture books, and this one had me in stitches. You know, I had to cross my legs not to pee. Um, and I'm going to ask you now, what do you think my favorite line in your book is? Get your book. What
Oh,
would be
oh my
my
goodness.
favorite line?
Your favorite line. Ooh, that's hard. Let's
It
see.
is. It's easy. I've given you a hint.
Oh, is it the cross the legs, grab and hold?
No,
Oh, I thought that was the hint. Hmm. I'm missing the hint. I think you're gonna have to give me another clue.
it's the one with the adults.
Oh, of course. Yes, yes. They'll remember in a couple of years.
Yes. So you, I wasn't wearing my diapers. I should have worn my diapers when I read this book because it's hilarious. So, before we read a little bit more of it and talk a little bit more of it, we're going to mention it again. How to Pee Your Pants the Right Way, by Rachel Michelle Wilson, published by Feiwel and Friends, out just in October.
Yes.
And I love this book because you have a voice. You know, everybody talks about a voice, but voices are kind of like ghosts. You know, they're hard to summon, and you have one. And your voice is just a tiny bit. Well, how would you define your voice?
Oh, I would say that I have a very I love comedy, so I like to it's hard to describe. I don't know. I feel I'm bad at describing my own voice, but I really feel inspired when something makes me laugh. And then I also really like layered layering the text. And then I
Hmm.
actually love simplicity. So a lot of my lines, will play with simplicity and then complexity and kind of playing with the jokes within that. I don't know.
So you have the right recipe, you know, which is humor and irony and a little bit of sarcasm, a modicum of snarkiness, and I love it. I love
Thank,
it. It's
thank you.
and so it's obvious to me that anybody seeing this who wasn't brain dead would love the humor, and it's so poignant, because you really have the guts to talk about something that is so very embarrassing.
Thank you
Is
so much.
is this going to turn into a series now with the eructation and flatulation and pooping and
No. Well, so a lot of people say, is the next book how to poop your pants the right way? And you see, it's funny because I never thought I would be writing a potty humor book. Sometimes it's dismissed as potty humor book, but I don't always love potty humor because sometimes it can be a cheap joke, right? A cheap joke. And I didn't want to rely on cheap jokes. I wanted to build them out and kind of play with them, and use different types of humor. And so anyway,
Oh,
I don't feel
mhm.
like I would know how to do that with the flatulence or the poop book, and I don't think I would want to illustrate it. So
It,
someone else can
it,
take that and
yeah,
roll
but
with
Rachel,
it.
it might grow on you. You might have an epiphany someday. Maybe
Maybe,
after this interview, you'll say, "Oh my goodness." Um,
maybe, very true. Could
yeah,
happen.
but there's a couple of things here. See, first of all, the anthropomorphic owl, right? Rather than a young boy or a young girl. Where'd you get that idea? That's brilliant because she's an empathy magnet from the get-go. Where did
Thank
that
you.
come from? That was you, right?
Yeah, so thank you so much for all these compliments. My head's gonna get way too big, but the owl came to me so fully formed. I feel like if it was a human being, it would feel too embarrassing. It would feel too intense.
Of
And
course.
so yeah, so I feel like it needed some emotional distance. And I also feel like exploring humor. I love silly looking animals. And so some of them, like there's one of my favorite animals in the book is actually the giraffe with braces. It's just so funny to me. This giraffe just looking.
Can you show us
Oh,
for the
yeah, I can show you.
people who
It's
are
on
watching the video?
this. So,
Yeah,
and then like,
these are one of the illustrators love to have these little sneaky jokes inside for people who
yeah,
love details.
yes, and I love it when illustrators do that, and I also feel way more inspired when I'm in my office alone and I'm having fun, and I have this like little mantra that I use, which is follow the fun. And so if I'm feeling like it's heavy, um, I ask myself, how can I make it more playful? And even in sad books, I think there's playful ways you can approach things, and sometimes humor isn't the right fit for the story, but I like to approach creativity in a playful way, no matter what. And it usually guides me well. And so little characters like this that make me laugh along the way, that's always fun. And like the little rabbit with the sweatband next to him, those little details make me laugh. And so that guides me. And then as far as the owl, it ended up working out well. It wasn't like I was super intentional about it necessarily. And sometimes you have to find your way through. But what was great about the owl was how round he is too. Round glasses, round big eyes, and I feel like that makes him very approachable. But I didn't necessarily design him that way on purpose. I discovered that through sketching. So that was like a happy accident.
Yeah, and there's also a disconnect between the anatomy that you show in the story, right? You know, an actual kid with legs and the pelvis and whatever you have. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I thought that was genius.
Thank you.
Let's move on now to the ghost story, which is going to be published in July.
Yeah. So the ghost story.
What can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, so it's called To Catch a Ghost, and it's about a little girl. So this one is a human character. She's spunky, she's fun, she's in like an adventure outfit, and she is the new kid at school and finds out that show and tell is on Friday. And show and tell is a huge deal. I don't know, for me anyway, when I was a kid, show and tell was like it had so much pressure on it socially. You didn't want to be the kid who brought something lame. You didn't want to come with nothing. Like it was intense. I remember that feeling. And so I basically that was the tension of the story, and that's what I wanted to tap into is that feeling. And so she decides she has nothing to bring, so she decides she's going to catch a ghost to bring to show and tell. And one of the problems about that is so to catch the ghost, she needed to get to know the ghost so that she would know the right way to trap the ghost. But by getting to know the ghost, it makes the moment that she's going to trap the ghost way more complicated because now the ghost is a friend. So she can catch a ghost, but can she catch a friend? And so that moral dilemma is at the heart of it.
Wonderful. Is that also derived from a story of your own that you remember from your childhood, or did you just whip this up?
So it
Did you conjure it?
Oh, see, you're good. You're good at the puns. And I am a pun appreciator.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
slap on there. Um, so the show and tell feeling, I tapped into that, but actually what came first, and this is unusual for me because usually I think in words first, but the illustrations came first, just of the ghost. So I don't know if you are you familiar with Inktober? It's a challenge on Instagram. Okay, so basically for the month of October, you use ink to create illustrations, art of any sort, and you post it on Instagram. So this was before when I had already prepared stories and was querying agents and getting rejections. I was doing this art project online to learn more about art, and I chose a ghost. I just felt really drawn to a ghost, and I was using really experimental inking techniques like
Mhm.
with screen printing ink and rollers and all sorts of fun. I was having fun. And this ghost character emerged, and one of my critique partners, thank goodness for critique partners, she said, there's got to be a book in here. You've got to make a book about this. And I was like, oh, I have no ideas. Okay. A month later, my brain's working on it, I guess, in the background. And I wake up one day. A lot of my ideas come at night, and I'm kind of an insomniac, so they come at that time, unfortunately, and keep me awake. But anyway, so it combined. The ghost came combined with the show and tell. I don't know why or how, but it did. And I was like, "Phew." And then I started writing it. So that's how it happened.
Incredible. And how do you feel? I can only write. I can't illustrate anything. Is is this always do they each benefit and live off of one another? Or sometimes you say, oh, I would really like to, well, I know you can draw giraffes, but I really have this great hippopotamus story, but I don't like illustrating hippopotami. Um, Nor do I. Um, does that happen? Like, is it always?
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So even though I am an illustrator and I've worked really hard to have to, it's been scary to call myself that. I have to push myself to say out loud, I'm an illustrator because I still feel like I can't draw. And I know that sounds funny, but when I have to really work hard to find my way to characters and to draw them so they actually look like things, and it's hard. And so, yeah, and so sometimes things intimidate me. Like I have a manuscript that I really, really like, and I don't know how to draw it. And I'm learning. I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do you know when it's time to only be the author and to have
Hmm.
another illustrator come in? I don't want to do it out of fear. I want to do it out of
Hmm.
choice. So I'm scared to draw these things. So the rule I've made for myself, at least right now that I'm trying, is I'm going to try drawing it. I'm going to try exploring it. And if it doesn't feel right and I'm not enjoying it, then I think I'm going to try going for author only on that book. And so I kind of have to emotionally feel my way through that to figure out what books I'm meant to illustrate and what books other illustrators are meant to illustrate.
What happens if it's, to quote Shakespeare, thrust upon you? If an editor
Like,
or an art director says, Rachel, I love this story, but let's find another illustrator. And you've already
ooh,
done the dummies and you have the characters. What happens then?
oh, that would be hard. That would be really hard, but I think like all feedback, sometimes you have to take it and sit with it for a while.
But it hasn't happened yet.
Oh, yeah. No, that hasn't happened. Oh, is that what
Okay,
you were
so
asking if that's happened?
no, it could happen. No, I'm saying if it happens. I mean,
Oh,
I'm trying to imagine, a situation which I cannot actually, uh,
experience. Yeah.
do experience.
Uh-huh.
So you have this brilliant book that just came out in October. Um,
Thank you.
Hilarious, funny, insightful, and
Thank
I know that adults are going to love it. I hope kids do as well. I'm not a kid anymore, but the kid inside me also loves it. So,
you.
um,
Yay.
and you have the Ghost one, which I'll be delighted to see. Who's the publishing it?
So To Catch a Ghost is being published by Scholastic, specifically Orchard Books in print.
Okay, wonderful. And you have a few secret books. Can you mention anything about them? When are they coming out? What are they about? Who's illustrating them?
So these will be illustrated by me, but I'm not trying to keep it a secret necessarily. It's so when you have a two-book contract, After you finish one book, you start pitching your stories to the publisher, and we try to find one that everyone loves, right? And so that's what I'm in the process of right now. So we're in the process of selecting one. So we don't know what it will be, but I've played with ideas in the How to Pee Your Pants universe. So I'm hoping for that. We shall see. But I have a bunch of other ideas too. And it's funny because all of my books coming out first are in second person, like To Catch a Ghost, How to Pee Your Pants. But I have lots of other books that are in second person as well. So we'll see which direction we go. But yeah, I'm not trying to be evasive. It's just we're in the middle of that part of the process.
And go ahead and be evasive. What do I care? Um, it- I'm thinking to myself, you're an incredibly gifted young person. Um, can anybody write picture books? What do you think?
I think I think yes, in the sense that I don't think everyone's voice matches with picture books. I think you can if you want to, if you have a passion for it. Uh, it's like, okay, so recently I got to visit with a school. I love doing school visits and meeting with kids and sharing my book and hearing their pee pants stories. It's so cute. And I find that a lot of kids are really, really scared to write and to illustrate and to put anything on the page. And one kid, we were drawing together, and he would didn't want to show me his art, and I didn't force him to because I understand that feeling. But I shared with the class that sometimes what keeps you from making things like picture books or whatever is your own fear. And so I really do believe that you can start using your fear instead of running away from it. And when you learn how to do that, how to use your fear and also your joy and all the things that make you you specifically, that's when I feel like your voice comes together, and it might fit in picture books and it might fit somewhere else. I don't know. I don't want to like limit myself necessarily, but I've never felt drawn towards writing a YA novel or an adult novel, but I feel very drawn towards middle grade, and I would love to write longer form as well. And so there are certain things that I'm drawn to. And so that's why I'm hesitating to say yes. Anyone can, but I don't know if everyone's voice matches with it. Does that make any
Uh-huh.
sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So listen, I'm going to start thanking you. We were introduced by Midge, right? So
Yeah.
thank you, Midge,
Thank you, Midge.
and Rachel, you're welcome to bring on other authors and illustrators. I love to interview picture book people. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Now it's time to wave your book again.
Okay.
Here it is, How to Pee Your Pants, uh, the right way as opposed to the
The
other
right.
ways,
Yes, the right way.
the non-right ways. It's been wonderful having you, and I'm going to introduce myself again. I'm actually extroducing myself because it's the end
Yeah.
of the show. So I've been with Rachel Michelle Wilson, this wonderful young author and illustrator, and I'm Mel Rosenberg, the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. See, nothing like practice, right?
Right. I love it.
So Rachel, it's been great having you. We're going to say goodbye to everybody else. Run and get her book, but make sure that you've gone to the bathroom before you read it.
Very true. Thank you so
Oh,
much for having me. This was lovely.
this is what I love to do. We're going to send everybody to buy your book. Go out of the link and come back, and we'll sum up just you and me.
Okay, perfect.
And
Thank you.
everybody else, thank you very much for being part of this. Love this interview.
Thank you.
Bye.
This was wonderful.